What if Atlantis was only one of many lost worlds? You're here now. The lights are dim, the air is still, and the world outside feels far away. I want you to take a deep breath and let it out slowly. Relax your shoulders, soften your jaw, let the weight of the day melt away. This is your time, a quiet place just for you. Wherever you are, whether you're curled up in bed, stretched out on the couch, or lying on a warm patch of grass under the night sky, you can let your body rest. Tonight we're drifting far from the noise of the modern world to a place where myth and memory blur, where the edges of history are soft and shimmering. And before we begin, tell me, where are you listening from tonight? I love knowing the far-off places your voices come from, all connected here in this quiet moment. You close your eyes. The first thing you hear is the hush of the ocean, a slow rhythm. Waves folding over themselves, retreating into the deep, then returning again forever. The sound is gentle, like a lullaby the earth has been singing since before you were born. There's a scent in the air, salt and something older, something faintly metallic like the memory of rain on stone. You don't see much yet, only the faint silver of moonlight brushing across the water's skin. It feels endless. This sand beneath your feet is cool, softer than you expect, as though it's been sifted by centuries of tides. You take a step and it sinks a little under your weight, holding you in place for a moment before releasing you again. The horizon is blurred, not just by mist, but by time itself. Out there, shapes shift and fade. Could be cliffs, could be ruins, could be nothing at all. The ocean is good at keeping secrets. As you stand there, you realize the wind is telling a story. It carries whispers, not in a language you know, but in a tone you understand. Longing, loss, and something almost like invitation. You get the strange sense that you've been here before, though you've never walked this shore in your waking life. It feels familiar. The night sky stretches above you like an ancient map, the stars scattered in constellations you know, and some you don't. The moon hangs low, heavy, casting its glow in a way that makes the water shine like black glass. You notice something, a faint glow beneath the waves, as if lights are still burning deep, deep below the surface. You blink, and they're gone. Or maybe they were never really there. You let yourself drift into the rhythm of the moment. The world you came from, the tasks, the noise, the endless ticking of clocks, fades into the background. Here, there is no rush. Here, there is only the breath of the wind and the pull of the tide. And yet, in the quiet, your mind begins to ask questions it normally wouldn't. Questions you can't quite shape. What if the ruins of this place, if that's what they are older than memory? What if they are only one piece of something far greater? Not just Atlantis, the city Plato wrote of, but a whole web of forgotten worlds lost in floods, earthquakes, and the slow turning of ages. You take another step along the shore. Something smooth and hard brushes against your toes. You kneel, brushing away wet sand to reveal a fragment of carved stone. It's worn nearly smooth by the centuries, but you can still trace faint patterns cut into its surface. Spirals, interlocking lines, symbols that seem to move when you look at them too long. You hold it in your hand, and it's heavier than it should be for its size. Dense, like it's holding more than just weight. The ocean laps at your feet again, as though trying to take it back. In the distance, the faint outlines of shapes begin to rise more clearly through the mist. Tower-like forms, broken walls, the suggestion of steps leading downward into the water. You know, without knowing how you know, that this isn't just rock. It's the bones of something that once lived, once thrived, and then was swallowed whole. There's a pull in your chest. Curiosity, yes, but also something deeper. Recognition. As though some part of you remembers the hum of life in those streets, the sound of markets and laughter, the feel of sunlight on plazas that are now dark and drowned. You stand very still, and for a moment you think you hear it. Not the crash of waves, but the echo of voices beneath them. Soft, blurred, like the last notes of a song carried away on the wind. The air is cooler now. A faint mist rises off the water and clings to your skin. It doesn't feel unpleasant, more like a veil being drawn between you and the rest of the world. You're not entirely sure you'd want to go back even if you could. Here, the past feels close enough to touch. Somewhere out in the dark a light flickers. Not the pale flash of moonlight on a wave, but a steady glow, faint and golden, like a lantern swaying gently under the water. It holds there for a moment and then fades, leaving only darkness. And still, you feel that pull, that question lingering at the edge of your mind. Not, what is Atlantis? But what if Atlantis was only one? One among many, one story in an ocean of untold stories. The tide creeps closer, licking at your ankles, urging you to step forward. You do, slowly, letting the water wrap around your feet, then your calves. It's warmer than you expect, as though it still remembers the sun from some other time. You close your eyes, and for a heartbeat, you're sure the world around you changes. The scent of spices in the air, the sound of music and conversation, the glow of torches reflected in polished stone. Then it's gone. Only the moon, the water, and the whisper of the wind remain. You take another breath, slow and deep, letting your body sink into the moment. The night doesn't hurry, the sea doesn't hurry, and neither will we. Somewhere, beyond what you can see, the story waits, stretching across oceans, across centuries, across worlds that lived and died before we ever drew our first breath. And tonight, in the quiet, we will follow it. Because some stories aren't just told, they are remembered. You feel the waves breathe around your ankles, a slow in and out like the world itself is falling asleep, and you let your own breath match it, in and out, steady, soft, unhurried. The mist hangs low, a silver veil across the sea, and the moon drifts like a lantern in a long dark hall. Your mind loosens, your shoulders sink, and the hush of night begins to hold you. In this quiet, when the shore is a soft ribbon and the stars are patient centuries above you, a thought arrives as light as foam and as deep as the tide. What if this place is only one? What if the city that slips in and out of the water's memory is just a single thread of a much larger tapestry? A pattern of lost worlds woven beneath deserts, beneath jungles, beneath miles of black water? You tilt your head, listening, and the question grows warmer, brighter, like a coal cupped in your hands. The wind brushes your cheek. It carries the faint smell of rain on old stone and something more, that clean, empty scent after the storm, when everything is washed and ready to begin again. You look out across the water and imagine lines faint as spider silk, connecting this drowned edge to distant shores. You don't see them with your eyes. You sense them with that quiet part of you that notices small truths. A road of memory runs from this bay to others, as if the earth once held a necklace of cities, shining and humming, and then one day the string snapped and the beads scattered into silence. You crouch, letting your fingers skim the surface. The sea is warmer than the air, gentle as a hand, and it holds its own steady rhythm under your touch. Tiny grains of sand swirl and settle, like thoughts you don't need to keep. The question moves through you again, softer now but clearer. What if we were never alone in our beginning? What if there were many beginnings, many rises, many evenings of greatness that drifted quietly into night? You don't feel fear. You feel a hush of wonder, a long room opening in your mind where echoes can wander and stretch without breaking. The glow you thought you saw beneath the waves returns, a faint ember in the dark water, here and not here. It's not bright enough to reveal forms, only enough to suggest them. You blink slowly. Shapes arrange themselves at the edge of your seeing. Perhaps steps, perhaps a plaza, perhaps just the moonlight teasing the eye. And suddenly, this sea feels like a glass lid over a library. The books are there, the shelves are there, and all the stories are waiting. You simply need the key. The key is always the question. The key is always this: what if the past is larger than the room we keep it in? You stand again, and your shadow slips across the sand, long and pale. It touches a scatter of smooth stones and then retreats, as the tide reaches a little farther. The shore and the water make quiet agreements. In the dark, I will come this far, I will leave this much, I will remember this line until morning. You recognize that kind of gentle vow. You've made it with yourself tonight, to rest, to soften, to let the world's edges blur. As your body loosens, your mind grows more awake to soft mysteries. The question settles on your tongue like a taste. What if? Two small words that open a door no lock can keep shut. You take a step along the curve of the beach. The sand whispers under your feet, and somewhere a gull calls once and is gone. The night is not empty. It is full of slow things. You picture other coasts where the same moon pours light on other waters, a rocky inlet far to the north, a lagoon warm as milk to the south, a reef gnawed to lace by time and waves. You picture the hands that once built walls and arches, placed stones with care, laid out streets to catch the morning sun. The hands are gone, but the intention lingers like perfume in the air of a room where someone just left. What if those intentions were not isolated sparks, but part of a widespread glow? Many hearths, many towers, many songs sharing a common rhythm we have almost, but not entirely forgotten. Your breath is easy now. The question threads through it like a ribbon. You let it lead you not to answers, but to images. A city of terraces that step down to a green sea, a ring of islands that hold a hidden harbour, columns that shine with wet light as the tide falls back, markets where bright cloth lifts and settles in the salt wind, a library with walls built to hum softly when the moon rises, as if the building itself remembers the songs of the night. You don't try to keep these pictures. You let them arrive and drift away as clouds do. The story to come will decide which ones matter. Your only task is to float. There is a feeling in your chest, a slow, expanding calm, like a sail filling with a steady breeze. The thought that used to make the world narrow, that history is a single line, that all roads march in one direction, loosens and melts. It becomes something kinder, a tide that comes and goes, an orchard that blooms and sleeps, a great clock with many hands pointing to many hours at once. What if we are waking not to our first dawn, but to one of many? What if behind us lie other mornings, other noons, other twilights, their footprints softened but not erased? You brush your palm along the top of a half-buried rock. It is flat, worn, and at one angle you think you see a groove that looks too straight to be an accident. You don't insist. The night prefers suggestions to declarations. Still, a quiet shiver moves through you. The good kind. The kind that arrives when something fits into place without force. The ocean's dark surface flickers. You feel more than see a layout. Circles and causeways, channels and courtyards, the way a city might be built if it loved the sea and feared it in equal measure. The design feels familiar in the way old songs do, the way a lullaby does when you hear it after many years, and your body remembers it before your mind does. The question keeps its shape, gentle and bright. What if Atlantis was only one of many? The words do not ask you to choose a side. They invite you to wander. The night is a museum without guards, and you walk softly through its halls, reading the placards the way you read dreams. Not for literal lines, but for the feeling that pools around each display. A shard of a bowl in one case, a piece of a map in another, a star chart drawn with soot on deerskin, the same 3 stars connected in places far apart. A story told by waves, a story told by wind, both repeating across a world that was always larger than we were taught to hold. You pause and lift your face to the sky. The constellations look like stitches, and you imagine the earth as a quilt with many panels, some bright with recent memory, some faded to almost nothing, all joined by these starry seams. If there were many lost worlds, their patterns might still be here in the fabric. A repeated spiral, a set of 3, a slant of diagonal lines that shows up in places that never met, except in the meeting place of the human hand and the human wish. You feel a warmth move through you, a simple kindness, the idea that across time and water, people have always looked up at the same sky and tried to bring a piece of it down to earth with stone and story. You walk farther, and the sand grows finer, almost like ash. The water grows quieter, as if the bay turns inward on itself. The glow you sensed fades until it's only a memory, and then the moon takes its place, laying a road of silver across the black. That road does not lead forward or backward, it leads inward. The question is the road. Walk it, and you will not leave yourself. You will enter yourself more deeply. And there, behind the daily thoughts, behind the lists and the clocks and the headlines, you discover a wide plain where old questions graze like calm animals. You sit among them. They do not rush you. They lift their heads and accept your company. What if the ocean is not a grave, you think, but a library with a strange filing system? What if deserts are not empty, but rooms with the lights turned off? What if jungles are not wild edges, but green curtains drawn over stages that once shone? A breeze comes, mild and damp, and you breathe it in as if it were a long drink. Your body relaxes further, a slow release you can feel from your brow down to your hands, your hips, your feet. The quiet takes you up like a boat. The boat drifts from the strand into a broader water, not far, not fast, just enough that the shore becomes a soft shadow and the sky widens. The question becomes a pulse now, steady and reassuring. It does not insist on answers. It offers a doorway and a soft light beyond it. You step through without leaving the beach, without moving at all. You step through by listening. What if? The phrase is an oar dipped in a dark river. Each stroke draws you forward, smooth and silent. The river carries reflections, a terrace, a column, a market, a song, and each passes under your boat without a ripple. You watch them go, grateful for their company and their restraint. You notice how peaceful the body feels when the mind changes shape. It's like loosening a tight ring, like opening a window in a warm room. Air moves, space appears. You can rest in that space, as if lying on soft grass in a walled garden under the kindest sun. In that rest, the question rests with you, not as a puzzle, but as a companion. What if we are not the first? It begins again, and you smile without moving your mouth. The smile happens in your chest, small and complete. A cloud draws across the moon, and the silver road dims. The tide is gentle as a breath, touching your toes, slipping back. You lower your gaze and let the night be what it is, a patient host, an old friend. You sense that the next part of the journey will draw you inland and outward at once, into names and stories, into places where the official lines are crisp and clean. But for now, you hover at the doorway of wonder. The question waits beside you, content, a lantern that never hurries, never wavers. What if? You whisper into the wind, and the wind answers not with words but with warmth. It wraps you like a blanket, and you sink deeper into yourself, deeper into the quiet. The shore, the sea, the sky. All three hold you the way a lullaby holds a child. The stone, the shadow, the silence. And in that holding, the door opens a little wider, and the path into the ancient story reveals the first soft curve of its route. You step toward it in your mind, unafraid, already half asleep and wholly awake to wonder. The mist thins as if it has decided you are ready to see more. The night air is cooler now, brushing your skin like the slow turn of a page. You stand at the edge of the water, your breath quiet and deep, the rhythm of the waves steadying your thoughts. Beyond the shoreline, a dark sweep of land rises, not high, but enough to break the horizon. You realize this is where the story will lead you tonight. Slowly, you begin to walk toward it. Each step leaves a brief shadow in the sand before the tide erases it, as if the sea is telling you not to worry about leaving marks here. Nothing in this place is meant to stay the way it is. The beach curves into a narrow strip of land, bordered on one side by black water, and on the other by low cliffs, their faces rough and lined, shaped by 1,000 storms. You follow the path between them, hearing the sea's voice change as the wind shifts. The closer you get to the rise ahead, the more you feel the pull, not of danger, but of memory, as if the place knows your footsteps. When you reach the edge of the rise, you pause. From here you can see the land beyond, a wide plateau that seems to hover above the ocean, its edges jagged where stone meets air. Even from this distance, you can see scattered shapes, blocks, pillars, something that might once have been walls. The moonlight paints them in silver and shadow, making them look both real and dreamlike. The air is different here. It smells of salt, yes, but also of earth, like rain has fallen recently somewhere inland. The wind carries faint hints of something floral, maybe the ghost of plants that no longer grow here. The sound changes too. The ocean's roar softens, replaced by a hum so low you might think it's in your head. You take a slow breath, letting your chest rise and fall. There's no rush. This place has waited for you for longer than you can measure. You begin to climb. The path is not steep, but it winds and curves, as if guiding you deliberately. Every few steps you catch glimpses of the sea through gaps in the rock, wide, dark, and endless. The moon slips in and out of clouds, casting the world in alternating light and shadow. You notice how the stones underfoot feel warm, as if they hold the day's heat even in the cool of night. At the top you step onto the plateau. The ground is uneven. scattered with fragments of stone that crunch softly under your shoes. Around you, the shapes you saw from below rise more clearly now, blocks taller than you, arranged in broken lines, pillars that lean slightly, as if tired from holding themselves upright for centuries, flat stones with edges too straight to be natural. These aren't scattered randomly. Even in their ruin, they suggest a pattern, the ghost of streets, the remains of foundations, an outline of something once whole. You stand still, letting your eyes trace the shapes. The plateau is not large, but it feels expansive because of the silence. The wind is gentle here, almost reverent, as if it knows it's moving through something sacred. You can almost imagine the sound of footsteps. Not yours, but others, many others, walking these same lines when the stones were new and the air was filled with voices. From this height the view reaches far. To the west the sea stretches without end. To the east low hills rise in soft shadows. Between them a faint silver ribbon, a river catching the moonlight. It flows toward the plateau as if it once carried goods, stories, people. You imagine boats, carved from wood or perhaps something stronger, gliding along that river toward this high place. You move slowly among the stones. Some are carved with lines and shapes, though most have been worn nearly smooth. You run your fingers along one and feel a faint groove, a deliberate cut. The stone is cool, but under your touch it seems to pulse, not literally, but in that way certain places feel alive. You look closer at the marks, wondering if they were part of a language, a symbol, or simply decoration. They might have told a story once. The ground dips slightly in one spot, forming a shallow basin. In the centre lies a flat slab, split down the middle as if by some great force. Around its edges are more stones, arranged in a loose circle. You can almost see it as it might have been. A gathering place, a council circle, a spot where decisions were made under the open sky. You step carefully inside, the stones cold under your feet. The air here feels different, stiller, heavier, as though it holds more than wind. You close your eyes and listen. The hum you heard earlier seems louder here, though it's still soft, like a note held just under hearing. Maybe it's the sound of the wind through the broken walls. Maybe it's something else, the deep memory of the stones themselves keeping time in a way we've forgotten. You take another slow breath, feeling your body loosen again. The night is not in a hurry to tell you its secrets. It prefers you to linger. When you open your eyes, the sky seems darker, though the moon still glows. Clouds drift slowly across it, changing its light, and the shadows on the stones shift like water. You look toward the sea and notice something you didn't before. A faint line on the horizon, darker than the rest of the ocean. You focus on it, and it seems to ripple as if it's not entirely solid. Perhaps it's another rise of land, or perhaps it's your eyes adjusting to the dark. Either way, you feel the pull of it. Another place, another question. You wander toward the edge of the plateau where the stone drops straight to the water below. The waves crash softly here, their sound rising in echoes along the cliff face. You lean out slightly and see the base of the plateau. Not rough, broken rock, but smooth, stacked stone. Layer upon layer, fitting together so precisely that even in the moonlight you can see the clean lines. This wasn't shaped by waves, it was built. The thought settles over you like a warm cloak. This place wasn't always ruins. Once it stood whole. Once it was part of something larger. And once people stood here not in silence, but in the hum of life. You can almost hear it now, under the wash of the sea. Voices, music, the sound of tools, the low rumble of trade and conversation. The echo is faint, but it's enough to make the hair on your arms rise. You stay there for a long moment, letting the image fill your mind, not rushing to prove or disprove it, just holding it, like a seashell that still smells faintly of the ocean it came from. The night is deep around you, the stones steady under your feet, the sea breathing below. You realize that if this place has stood through storms, tides, and centuries, it can wait a little longer for you to understand. When you turn back toward the heart of the plateau, the circle of stones seems to glow faintly in the moonlight. Not from any light of its own, but from the way the pale rock catches the silver. It feels like an invitation to step inside, to listen, to be still. You move toward it, each step slow and quiet, and when you reach the center, the hum seems to shift again, lower now, almost like a heartbeat. You close your eyes and the night folds around you. Somewhere far away, or maybe just beyond the next breath, there are other places like this, other plateaus, other ruins, other stones that hum in the dark. You don't need to see them yet. It's enough to know they might be there, waiting. The question that brought you here lingers, warm and steady. What if Atlantis was only one? You let it settle in you like a stone in still water, the ripples moving outward, carrying you deeper into the night's quiet. The plateau, the sea, the sky. All three hold their silence, and you match it, breathing slowly, ready for where the story will lead next. The air at the top of the plateau is calm now, the wind falling away as though it has stepped aside to let something else speak. You stand in the circle of stones, your breath slow, your heartbeat steady, the weight of the night pressing lightly on your shoulders. Around you, the ruins hold their silence with a kind of dignity, as if they had been waiting centuries for someone to notice them in this way, not as puzzles to solve, but as old friends to sit with. And so you do. You sit on one of the lower stones, its surface cold but smooth, and you look out toward the sea. The water glows faintly where the moon brushes it, every ripple a silver thread weaving through the dark. Far off, the horizon is a perfect line, the sky resting quietly upon it. Somewhere beyond that line, the story of this place begins, at least the version that has been told in books and classrooms. That version is neat, framed in dates and names, its edges sharp. It is the official history. It starts, as many things do, with a story told by a single voice. In this case, the voice belongs to Plato, the philosopher of ancient Greece, who wrote of a great island kingdom in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias. He described Atlantis as a vast and powerful realm, rich in resources, skilled in art and engineering, with ships that crossed the seas and armies that reached far beyond their shores. But in his telling, Atlantis grew proud, even arrogant, and in a single day and night of misfortune, the island sank beneath the waves, never to be seen again. Plato claimed he was passing along an older tale, one told to his ancestor Solon by Egyptian priests, who said the events had happened some 9,000 years before their time. For most historians, this was a clue not to its truth, but to its nature, a parable, an allegory about the dangers of hubris wrapped in the clothing of a lost civilization. In the official account, Atlantis was never meant to be taken literally. It was a philosophical tool, a mirror held up to human ambition. And so, for centuries, scholars placed it firmly in the realm of myth. They acknowledged the power of the story, the beauty of its imagery, but they treated its setting as fictional. The boundaries of the known world were mapped, seas were charted, and no great island was found in the Atlantic where Plato said it had been. The neatness of this conclusion was appealing. It allowed the past to remain ordered, each piece in its proper place. You shift slightly on the stone, feeling its coolness seep through your clothes. The stillness of the night makes it easy to imagine the world as those scholars saw it. A world where history begins with the rise of the first known cities in Mesopotamia, where the narrative is clean, progressing from stone tools to bronze to iron, each step forward leaving the earlier one behind. In that view, the great mysteries are few, and most of them already solved. But even in the official telling, there are cracks. Over the years, explorers and adventurers claimed to find traces of something older. Ruins beneath the sea, strange maps, artifacts that didn't fit the timelines. These were often dismissed, but they left shadows in the edges of the narrative, like faint writing beneath a page of fresh ink. You look down at your hands, imagining the scrolls and tablets in some ancient library, the ones that held stories now lost. Perhaps some of them told of places beyond the familiar seas, of cities whose towers caught the morning sun before vanishing into the deep. Perhaps others spoke of disasters that swept away whole cultures, leaving only the barest memory. Those memories could have drifted from mouth to mouth, across generations, until they reached Plato's pen. Transformed perhaps, but not entirely invented. The stone under you feels older than the story, older than the names we give it. It might have stood here when Plato's words were first spoken, when Solon heard them in the halls of Egyptian priests, when the events themselves, if they ever happened, were fresh in the minds of survivors. You place your palm flat against it, feeling its unyielding surface. Whatever else is uncertain, this is not. The stone is real. The air you breathe is real. The quiet, the stars, the pull of the tide, all real. And sometimes the reality of a place is enough to make the official version seem small. From the plateau's edge, you watch the slow movement of the waves. The sea has a way of swallowing time, making years feel like minutes and minutes like centuries. You think of sailors crossing these waters in wooden ships, their sails full of wind, their eyes scanning the horizon for land. For most, the journey was from one known point to another, but for some perhaps the journey was toward something whispered, a place spoken of in low voices, drawn on maps in faint lines, a place that might not exist but still pulled them across the waves. The official history leaves little room for such places. It speaks instead of charted coastlines, recorded expeditions, measured distances. It marks the boundaries of the known and warns against straying too far beyond them. Yet here you are, sitting among stones that suggest a different map entirely, one where the edges are not so fixed, where the spaces between the known points are filled with possibility. You close your eyes for a moment and let the sound of the sea wrap around you. The official story is neat, yes, but the world is rarely neat. It is full of tides and storms, of accidents and changes no one can predict. And it is full of memory, not just the kind kept in books, but the kind carried in the land itself, in the ocean, in the wind that shapes the stones over centuries. That memory is harder to read, but it is no less real. Opening your eyes, you see the moonlight shift as a cloud passes overhead. The ruins around you seem to change with it. In bright light, they're just broken shapes. In shadow, they almost form streets again. You wonder if the official history is like that too, changing its shape depending on where the light falls, revealing and hiding in turn. From this quiet place, it's easy to imagine both truths coexisting. Perhaps Plato's Atlantis was a lesson, a story to warn against pride. Perhaps it was also a memory, blurred and softened by time, of a place that once stood and then fell. The neatness of the official account doesn't erase the possibility of older, stranger truths beneath it. The sea's voice grows a little louder as the tide shifts. You listen to it, feeling its slow insistence. The water has been here longer than the story, longer than the stone. It has seen continents change, mountains rise and fall, islands appear and vanish. If it holds the truth, it does not rush to give it. It will tell it in its own time, in its own way. You lean back slightly, letting your gaze drift up to the stars. They are the same stars that shone over Plato's Athens, over the Nile, over whatever ships once sailed to or from the place he called Atlantis. They are older than any story, older than any stone, and they too are part of the official record, the one no one can alter, the one written in light. Sitting here, between the stone and the sea, you feel the pull of both versions, the ordered lines of the official history and the shifting shadowed spaces beyond them. You don't have to choose. The night makes room for both. The air is still, the stone solid beneath you, the stars patient above. Somewhere in the dark, the next part of the story waits, and you are ready to follow it when it comes. For now, you breathe, slow and deep, and let the quiet of the official history settle around you, knowing it is only the first layer of the tale. The quiet of the plateau holds steady, but something in the air feels different now, as if the night has leaned closer to whisper. You stay seated for a moment longer, letting your breath remain slow, your muscles loose, but your senses begin to sharpen. The official story has been told. Its edges are neat, its sentences clean. But now, in the stillness, other threads begin to show. They are finer, harder to catch, like hairline cracks in a vase that only appear when the light strikes them just so. These are the early clues of anomaly, the signs that the accepted picture is not complete. You rise from the stone and begin to wander, careful not to rush your steps. The plateau's ground is uneven, and the stones scattered here do not all match. Some are pale, flecked with shells and coral, as if they once lay under shallow water. Others are darker, veined with minerals that do not belong to this place at all. You crouch beside one. It is a warm reddish colour, almost like iron, and its surface is smooth, worked. You know enough to recognise that this kind of stone is not native to this coastline. It must have been brought here, carried over some distance. The question comes naturally: how and from where? A little farther on, you find a line of blocks half buried in the earth. They are arranged too neatly to be random. 3 in a row, all the same size, their sides fitting together so tightly that even the wind cannot slide between them. You run your fingertips along the seam between 2 of them. The fit is exact. No mortar, just stone against stone, as if they were grown together rather than carved apart and placed. The craftsmanship is too precise to be dismissed as accident. The moonlight slips across their surface, catching faint scratches, not the rough lines of erosion, but marks that seem deliberate. You can't tell if they are symbols or simply patterns, but they repeat in a way that makes you think of weaving, of knots and loops, of something meant to record or guide. The marks are worn, softened by centuries, yet they still speak in their own quiet language. As you walk, the hum you noticed earlier returns. It's not in the air exactly. It's in the stones themselves. It is the kind of sound you don't hear with your ears but feel in your chest. Low, steady, like the distant turning of machinery or the vibration of a great bell after it's been struck. You pause, placing your palm flat on a nearby block. The vibration is faint, but it's there, a slow pulse. Perhaps it's just the wind or the movement of the tide below, but then perhaps not. Your path takes you toward the far edge of the plateau, where the ground dips slightly before meeting the cliff. Here, the stones are different again. These are long, flat slabs, some cracked, some tilted at odd angles, as if something's once heavy moved beneath them. Between two of them, you notice a gap, narrow but deep. You crouch and peer into it. At first, it's only shadow. Then, as your eyes adjust, you see that the sides of the gap are lined with smooth stone cut at perfect right angles. This is no natural fissure. It could be the top of a wall, the edge of a chamber buried long ago. The wind picks up for a moment, curling around you, bringing with it a smell that doesn't belong. Not salt or earth, but something metallic, faint and sharp, like the scent of a struck coin. You inhale slowly. The plateau is speaking in its own way, offering pieces but not the whole. You straighten and look out over the ocean. Somewhere below these cliffs, beneath the reach of the moonlight, there may be more. Entire sections of the structure could lie under the water, hidden by silt and coral. The thought makes you feel both small and strangely connected, as if the stones beneath your feet are only the top of something vast, a single note in a chord too large to hear all at once. The anomalies are not just here. You think of other places you've read about, places where the pattern repeats. There's the stone road under the shallow waters near Bimini in the Bahamas, a formation some say is natural, others swear is man-made. The blocks are lined too neatly to be chance. There's Pavlopetri, an entire ancient town lying under the sea off the coast of Greece, its streets and walls still visible through the clear water. In India, off the coast of Dwarka, divers have found stone structures that suggest a city far older than the myths that mention it. Each of these sites is explained away in the official account. Natural formations, coincidental arrangements, settlements that sank due to coastal erosion. And perhaps some of those explanations are true, but the similarities whisper of something else. A repeating shape in the shadows, a story told in different accents across the world. You step carefully over a broken section of the plateau, the stone shifting slightly under your weight. Here, a cluster of small, rounded pebbles catches your attention. They are unlike the sand and rock around them. Smoother, lighter in colour, almost white. You pick one up, and its surface feels polished, as if it's been tumbled in water for years. You glance around. There is no stream here, no river that could have brought them. They seem placed, as if part of something that once stood here. The more you look, the more you notice. A curve in the alignment of stones that doesn't match the rest, like the edge of a circle. A flat, narrow slab that could have been a threshold. A groove worn into one block, just the right size and shape for a hand. These are not the grand anomalies, not towering statues or impossibly massive walls, but the small ones, the quiet details that speak of hands and purpose. The hum in the stone seems to grow stronger when you stand in certain spots, as if the plateau itself has a pulse that rises and falls with where you place your feet. You test it, moving slowly from one stone to another, pausing each time to feel. Some are silent. Others carry that faint, steady vibration. It could be the way the rock is set, the way it catches the wind. Or it could be something left here long ago. Not magic, not even technology as we think of it, but a kind of design that still works after centuries, like a whisper that never stops. You find yourself drawn back toward the circle of stones in the center of the plateau. Standing there now, you notice something you missed before. A faint line running outward from the circle, made of smaller stones half buried in the earth. You follow it with your eyes, and it points directly toward the river you saw earlier in the distance. Perhaps it was once a path, or a line of sight, or something more symbolic, a connection between water and stone, between movement and stillness. The anomalies are like that, lines pointing outward, suggesting connections beyond the plateau. Each one could be explained away on its own, but together they form a pattern that is harder to ignore. A pattern that says, this place is not just ruin. It is a fragment, a piece of something larger. The wind shifts again, and the smell of the sea returns clean and sharp. You let your shoulders loosen, your breath slow again. The clues will not vanish if you rest a moment. They've been here far longer than you. You sit once more on the edge of a stone, the night cool on your skin, and you think about how anomalies work, how they start small as questions and then grow, leading you deeper into the story. And somewhere, just beyond where the moonlight reaches, you sense there is more. Larger pieces, stranger patterns, evidence that will not fit into the neat lines of the official account. The plateau has given you the first signs. The rest waits in the shadows, patient as the tide. The tide moves with a soft, unbroken rhythm far below, its sound folding into the quiet of the plateau like a low drum beat. You sit for a while, watching the moon slip between slow-moving clouds, and the stillness settles into you again. But that hum inside the stones, that subtle, impossible vibration, it lingers, and with it comes a deeper pull. The small signs you've noticed are enough to make the air here feel different, heavier somehow, as though you're standing over the entrance to a much larger truth. You rise and wander toward the edge where the cliff drops into shadow. The smell of salt grows stronger, and a fine spray cools your face when the wind carries it upward. You crouch at the lip of the rock and peer down. The moonlight catches on something far below, not the shifting white of foam, but straight lines, angles. For a breath you see it clearly. 2 parallel rows of stone, each block massive and even, stretching away into the dark water. The lines are too precise for nature's hand. Then the clouds slide across the moon, and the vision fades back into black. You step back, steadying yourself. That glimpse is enough to stir something deeper, the kind of knowing that has nothing to do with proof and everything to do with recognition. The official account would insist on natural formations, perhaps basalt columns or ancient fault lines. But the sight of those clean angles in the moonlight refuses to settle into that explanation. They felt, made. You turn away from the cliff and walk across the plateau again. The stones crunch underfoot, and here and there the earth has split in narrow seams, showing glimpses of smoother, worked stone beneath. It's as if the ruin you stand on is only the top layer of a much taller structure, most of it buried. You pause at one of the seams and reach in with your fingers. The stone below is cool and strangely slick, almost polished. You wonder how far it goes down. How many layers of this place lie hidden under your feet? Your mind drifts to other places in the world where such buried secrets have been found. There are stories of massive stones in Baalbek in Lebanon, blocks so large that no modern crane could easily lift them, yet they were moved and set in place thousands of years ago. In Pumapunku, high in the Bolivian Andes, the stonework is so exact, so finely cut, that it fits together like the pieces of a machine. And in each case, the tools and techniques officially assigned to the builders do not seem equal to the task. The plateau's hum feels stronger now, as if acknowledging your thoughts. You follow it without meaning to, your steps carrying you toward the far side, where the ground dips slightly into a shallow hollow. Here, the stones are different again, darker, harder, flecked with something that glitters faintly. You kneel to look closer and see that the surface is cut with long, straight grooves. They are worn, but their precision is undeniable. The grooves run in perfect parallel, too clean for erosion, too intentional to be random. You place your hand against one and feel the faintest warmth, though the night air is cool. Perhaps the stone holds the day's heat, or perhaps the warmth is older, something that has been there since the moment it was placed here. You can almost imagine these grooves forming part of some greater mechanism, a way to channel water, or light, or sound. The clouds thin again, and the moonlight pours down across the hollow. The grooves catch the silver light, and for a moment you see how they connect, not randomly, but as part of a larger pattern. It's a shape you can't quite name, though it feels familiar. Not a star, not a spiral, but something between the two, something that hints at movement without actually moving. You stand there for a long time, tracing the shape in your mind until the wind shifts and the scent of the ocean deepens. You glance toward the sea and think again of those straight lines beneath the water. If this plateau is only the uppermost edge of a greater whole, then the rest of it may lie out there, under the waves, sealed away like a memory. The thought takes you further back, to the time when the world's sea levels were lower, during the last ice age, when coastlines reached farther out. Entire cities, entire cultures could have stood where the ocean now lies, their stones bright in the sun, their streets busy with voices. Then the ice melted, the water rose, and the ocean took them without a sound. What is left behind is not only ruin, but impossibility, evidence that refuses to fit neatly into the timelines we know. You recall reading about certain tools and objects found where they should not exist. In South America, there are stones shaped with such precision that only high-speed rotary tools could replicate them today. In Egypt, there are cuts in granite so smooth they seem to have been made with diamond-tipped saws, yet they date to a time when such technology should have been unthinkable. The anomalies pile up, each one alone perhaps dismissible, but together forming a weight that bends the shape of accepted history. The plateau feels like one of those weights. You can feel it under your feet, not only in the literal stones, but in the quiet pressure of its presence. It doesn't ask you to believe anything. It doesn't speak in certainty. It simply exists, and in existing, it unsettles the neat lines of the map. You walk back toward the center, where the circle of stones sits like a heart in the body of the ruin. You step inside it and close your eyes, letting the hum fill your awareness. It is steady, slow, like the beat of a great clock far below. Perhaps it is nothing more than the wind and the waves, a trick of sound in the stone. Or perhaps it is what remains of something once alive here, a pulse that refuses to stop, no matter how many centuries pass. The air feels thicker inside the circle, and you remember the way certain places in the world are said to hold energy. The standing stones of Britain, the earth mounds of North America, the ringed temples of Malta. Some say these places were designed to work with the Earth's natural forces, amplifying them or storing them. Others dismiss such ideas as imagination. But standing here, the hum in your chest matching the hum in the stones, it is hard to imagine this arrangement being accidental. You open your eyes and look up at the sky. The stars above the circle seem sharper, closer. You can almost believe they're aligning with something here on the ground, some geometry you can't fully see. Perhaps once this circle marked the turning of the year, the solstices, the equinoxes. Perhaps it was a map not of the land but of the heavens. The night deepens, the air cools, and yet you feel warmer, as if the plateau has drawn you in. The evidence that defies explanation is all around you, in the stone brought from far away, in the cuts too clean for ancient tools, in the shapes half buried and the lines beneath the water. It is not proof. Proof is a cage. This is something else, an opening, a widening of the world's edges. You breathe slowly, matching the rhythm of the sea far below. The plateau waits in its quiet way, holding both the questions and the impossibilities. And in that stillness you understand. This place is not asking you to solve it. It is asking you to remember that the world is stranger than the lines we draw on its maps. The wind moves again, gentle and constant, as though it has been blowing through the stones for 1,000 years without pause. You let it brush against your face, and you feel the night pressing deeper, preparing to carry you further into the story, past the realm of what we can measure and into what we can only imagine. The wind softens to a murmur, like someone speaking just beyond hearing, and in that hush, a different layer of the story begins to rise. You stand at the center of the plateau, the stones cool under your feet, the air rich with the scent of salt and something faintly sweet. A trace of flowers that no longer bloom here. It's as though the place itself is remembering for you, summoning images from a time when it was not ruin but home. You close your eyes. At first, the darkness is just darkness. Then it begins to fill, with a glow of firelight against smooth walls, the echo of footsteps across stone courtyards, this sound of voices weaving together in a language you don't know but somehow understand. These are not the sharp, clean lines of recorded history. They are softer, blurred at the edges, like the way dreams remember things. And in these dreams, the past speaks not in dates or measurements, but in stories. When you open your eyes, the plateau feels warmer, more alive. You think of the people who once walked here, not as distant, faceless ancients, but as real, living beings who felt the same salt wind on their skin, who watched the same moon pull silver paths across the sea. And you remember something, that long before history was carved into stone tablets or written on papyrus, it was spoken, passed from mouth to ear, shaped by memory, carried like fire from one generation to the next. In every culture, there are stories of lands that sank, of cities swallowed by the sea, of worlds that ended in flood or fire. The names are different. Mu in the Pacific, Lemuria in the Indian Ocean, Atvataba, Thula. But the pattern is the same. A great place, rich and bright, falls into ruin and disappears beneath the waves, leaving only whispers behind. You recall the legend of Mu, told in fragments across Polynesian and Micronesian traditions, of a vast island realm that stretched across the Pacific, connecting lands now separated by thousands of miles of open water. The people of Mu were said to be skilled navigators, reading the stars as if they were letters in a book, travelling distances that modern sailors would think impossible without maps or compasses. In some tellings, they fled their sinking homeland in great canoes, scattering across the islands we know today, carrying with them not just tools and seeds, but songs that spoke of where they came from and what they had lost. In the Indian Ocean, there are older whispers of Lemuria, a land said to have connected Madagascar and India before the seas rose. Some Tamil traditions still speak of Kumari Kandam, a continent-sized realm that vanished under the waves, taking with it entire kingdoms and their libraries of knowledge. These aren't written as allegories. They are told as memories, deep memories, carried so long that their edges have softened, but their core remains. You move slowly toward the edge of the plateau where the view opens wide over the sea. The wind is cool here, brushing your face, carrying the faint echo of those old stories. You remember the accounts of the Maya and the Aztec, whose myths speak of floods that destroyed the first sun, the second sun, and more, each world ending and another beginning. The Hopi tell of previous worlds destroyed by water, fire, and ice, and of survivors guided to safety by spiritual messengers. The Maori of New Zealand tell of the great wave, Te Tai o Ruatapu, that swept away entire peoples. Some of these tales are tied to specific events, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, earthquakes, but others feel bigger. Less about a single disaster and more about a cycle, a pattern that repeats over and over, erasing and remaking the map of the world. You let the breeze flow over you, and in its sound, you imagine the voices of those who lived through such endings. A fisherman in a small boat, watching the horizon swell higher and higher, a mother gathering her children, the earth trembling under her feet, a storyteller years later speaking to a circle of listeners by firelight. We came from the land that sank. We came from the city that sleeps under the waves. You step closer to the edge, the sea far below, black and glassy in the moonlight. Somewhere out there, under the water, there may be stones like these, still standing in perfect lines, their carvings untouched by the air for thousands of years. You imagine diving down through cool, dark water, the light fading until the world is only shadow and shape. And then, out of the gloom, a wall, a stairway, a row of pillars reaching upward toward the surface they can never touch. The image pulls you deeper into thought. The storytellers of the past didn't just keep memories alive, they turned them into guides. In many traditions, the flood myths come with warnings about balance, about respect for the natural world, about what happens when pride grows too great. It is easy to dismiss these as moral lessons invented to teach humility. But what if they are more than that? What if they are coded accounts of real events, preserved not as dry records but as living words? You look again at the plateau around you, at the circle of stones, at the straight lines half buried in earth. Perhaps this place once had its own stories, spoken in a language now lost. Perhaps those who lived here told their children about where they came from, about what lay beyond the horizon, about the rise and fall of other lands. Maybe they even knew of Atlantis, not as a myth, but as a memory, the way we might remember the fall of cities in our own time. The clouds pass over the moon again, dimming the light, and in the shadow the plateau seems to shift. The stones look less like ruins and more like pieces waiting to be reassembled. You imagine the sound of voices here long ago, the low rhythm of chanting, the rise and fall of words meant to carry far. And then you hear one more whisper in your mind, not in English, not in any language you know, but carrying the same meaning you've heard in a dozen other traditions. We were not the first, and we will not be the last. You step back from the edge and walk slowly toward the center again. The night is deep now, the stars thick overhead, their light scattered across the sea. The wind brings no new scent, no new sound, but the air feels fuller, as if the place is holding its breath. Perhaps it is waiting for you to connect these scattered stories into something larger, something that stretches beyond the borders of this single plateau. You sit again on the same stone as before, feeling its cool weight beneath you. Around you, the ruins seem to lean in slightly, their shapes attentive. You think of the way folklore works, how it changes in the telling, how it absorbs the place and time of each storyteller, yet somehow keeps a thread that runs back through centuries. That thread might be the truest thing in the story, the thing that refuses to fade no matter how many times the details are altered. Here, in the middle of this quiet plateau, you can almost feel that thread running under your feet, connecting this place to others like it, to islands and continents that no longer rise above the waves, to names spoken around fires long gone cold. It runs under the sea, under mountains, under the shifting skin of the earth, tying together memories that most of the world has forgotten. The wind brushes past again, and this time you imagine it carrying the voices of all those storytellers, from Mu, from Lemuria, from Atlantis, from lands whose names we no longer even guess. Not warning, not pleading, just telling. Because some stories are not meant to persuade, they are meant to remember. You let your eyes close again, the hum of the stones steady under you. Somewhere out there in the dark, the past is still speaking, and you are still listening. You rise slowly, as if lifted by the breath of the night itself, and begin to walk among the stones with the gentleness you would use in a room full of sleeping children. The hum in the rock follows you like a soft note, and as you move, other places begin to stir in your mind. Distant shores you have not seen, mountains you have not climbed, harbours where you have never stood. The plateau becomes a compass, and everywhere you turn, a thread leads out into the dark, tying this one silent ruin to others like it. You do not need maps. You only need to let the images float to the surface, easy as driftwood on a still tide. To the west you imagine the long Cordillera of the Andes, stone shouldering the sky, and high upon it a city stitched into the spine of the world. Terraces step down like green stairways, and walls meet at angles so clean you might think the stones learned how to breathe together. In the low light of dawn, blocks fit without mortar, the seams so tight that a blade of grass cannot slip between them. The air up there is thin and clear, and when you draw it into your lungs, it feels like drinking light. You picture hands that knew stone the way a musician knows an instrument. The weight of it, the sound it makes when you tap it with a knuckle, the exact line where it wants to break and the exact line where it refuses. Standing on your plateau, you feel the echo. Here, too, stone met stone like thoughts fitting in a quiet mind. Turn, and the wind carries you over a wide ocean to a land where the desert meets a green, shining river. In the heart of that river valley, triangles of stone lean against the horizon, precise and calm, their faces holding morning sun the way a bowl holds water. The scale is gentle from far away, but as you drift closer, the gentleness becomes awe. The blocks are as large as rooms. Passages run straight into the heart of the structures, narrow and cool, as if cut by patience rather than tools. In the hush of those corridors, your own breath sounds like a secret. The language of stone is the same as the language of your plateau, measured, deliberate, humming with a logic that does not hurry. Different rivers, different sands, yet the hands that built them seem to know the same song. Turn again, and the air tastes of salt and sweet rain. Across a great sea, on a small triangle of land wrapped in mist, a ring of upright stone stands in a circle like a council that never adjourned. Each stone is a presence, each lintel a quiet bridge that turns air into architecture. The open sky is the ceiling, the grass is the floor, and the line of the sun in winter slips exactly where it is meant to go. You stand at the edge of that ring and feel the same pulse you felt on the plateau. A soft pressure against your chest, not frightening, just insistent. When the first light of the year threads the arch, it feels like a key turning. If you placed a stone from this circle on your plateau, no one would think it out of place. The form would change, the accent would be different, but the sentence would be the same. Far to the east, the sea darkens to a deep blue, and currents braid themselves under islands like strands of hair. Off the coast of a rocky shore, a shape lies under the water, all steps and plains, an underwater staircase that looks as if it was meant for giants or for gods. The surf combs its edges and retreats, combs and retreats, and the stone holds steady, sharp where you expect soft, deliberate where you expect random. Divers move along its face like birds moving along a cliff, small and careful. No temple stands above it, no roof remains, and yet your mind supplies both. Your mind supplies torches shimmering in the water, and a plaza where the sea floor is now. At your plateau, the grooves under your hand remember this place. Here and there, angles rhyme with angles, and the earth whispers, "Yes, I have said this word before, in a different tongue." There are other echoes too, in places where jungle breathes over ruins and vines knit roofs as deftly as any ancient carpenter. In one city, towers rise like the trunks of stone trees, and stairs climb to the clouds. When rain falls, it beads on the carved faces and runs down, making every eye look wet, every mouth look as if it has just spoken. The plazas there are wide and patient, built for gatherings that measure time in festivals instead of clocks. Somewhere else, in a land of red stone and quiet canyons, facades are carved into the living rock, doorways opening into shadow, music of footsteps swallowed before it can return. None of these places is the same, yet all of them seem to understand a simple idea. That stone can be taught to remember light. Your plateau understands it too. Even in ruin, the lines know where the sun should go. Across another ocean, in a land of clear bays and bright fish, giant figures face the horizon with the gravity of elders. Their backs are straight, their gazes long, as if watching for a ship that left long ago and has not yet returned. Beneath each calm face, the ground hides more stone. Long bodies, foundations deep in the earth, as if each figure is an island with only its peak above the grass. On your plateau you cannot see any faces, but you can feel the same posture, the same patience. A city can watch too. A circle of stones can stand as a lookout and a memory both. If you lift your eyes upward, higher than mountains, higher than clouds, the comparison continues. The sky is a great table, and across it the stars glide in their quiet paths. In so many of these places, the stones line up with those paths, mirroring the heavens so the ground can join in the dance. A row meets the rise of the morning star. A courtyard catches the last light of a long summer day. A stair points to where 3 bright points make a belt, and a river below curves like the river above, the one we call the Milky Way. Your plateau, too, seems to turn its face toward the sky. You imagine standing here at the turning of the year, watching the first blade of dawn slide between 2 pillars and feeling your bones chime with recognition. There are worlds beneath water as well, towns on the sea floor where streets run straight and walls meet at right angles, waiting for fish to pass where people once did. In one warm gulf, sonar traced neat grids where the silt is heavy. In another clear bay, divers swam through doorways the colour of old honey. On a Mediterranean shelf, an entire village rests in shallow water, pots still where hands once set them down. On your plateau, the cliff looks into the black, and now and then the moon catches a corner below that is too true to be chance. The ocean keeps its quiet, but it does not hide everything. The pattern that ties these places together is not a single blueprint. It is something gentler, a family resemblance. The stones remember how to meet without mortar. The edges love to be straight and true. The builders, whoever and whenever they were, listened to the sky and let it draw lines on the ground. They carried rock from far away when they could have used what lay at their feet, as if the material mattered, as if the stone itself had a role to play in the song. And everywhere, water was an honoured guest, channeled, mirrored, framed, invited to speak. Your plateau hums when the wind and the sea meet it just so. You begin to think that hum is the low note of a much wider choir. You walk to the edge again and look out over the black glass of the ocean. The road of moonlight pulls a soft silver stripe from you to the horizon. In that stripe you see the parallels stack themselves like pages, tight seams, clean angles, terraces stepping down like thoughts becoming words, circles that catch the morning, doorways that face the same star century after century. None of this proves anything the way a stamp or a signature would, but it does not need to. Proof is hard, narrow, good for locking and unlocking. Pattern is wide, patient, good for remembering. Your breath slows even more, and your body softens until you feel as if you could melt into the stone and sleep there without moving until sunrise. The comparative shapes drift in and out of you like tide foam, a ring of stones on a misty plain, a stepped platform at the bottom of a bright sea, a wall that fits so perfectly you can't slide a whisper between its blocks, a face of a statue that looks 1,000 miles without blinking. Somewhere inside those shapes, the same idea turns like a wheel, that knowledge travels farther than boats, that memory crosses oceans without getting wet, that people who never met might still hear the same music in their bones and build to its measure. The plateau says little, but it agrees. You can feel its ascent in the light brush of wind against your cheek, in the low thrum where your soles touch the ground, in the way the stars seem to pause over the circle as if they are listening. Perhaps Atlantis was only one word in a long sentence, only one city in a chain of cities that linked shore to shore before the waters rose and the pages were torn. Perhaps the lost worlds are not separate stories at all, but chapters of the same book written in stone, each chapter ending with a wave and beginning again on a new coast. You turn once more, slow and unhurried, letting your eyes take in the broken lines and the moon-silver edges. The comparisons do not sharpen into conclusions, they soften into comfort. The world is larger than any map, and the past is wider than any single timeline. The places speak to each other in the oldest language: weight, angle, light, shadow. And tonight, you're learning a few simple words of it. You don't need to master the grammar. You only need to listen. The wind sighs through the ruins. Somewhere far away, a night bird calls and then falls silent. You stand at the plateau's center and feel the world's scattered stones drawing near to one another in your mind like islands at low tide, the channels between them shallow enough to wade. The comparisons form a gentle bridge, not to certainty, but to wonder. And wonder tonight is enough. The night is deep now, the kind of dark that seems to hold its own weight, and yet your plateau feels brighter for all the shapes and echoes you've gathered from across the world. You stand within the circle of stones, your hands resting lightly at your sides, and you feel the next step in the story approaching, slower than a wave, quieter than a footstep. It is the turn from pattern to possibility, from what is seen to what might be. For as long as there have been ruins, there have been theories. You can almost hear the voices now, some calm and measured, others electric with excitement. Each voice shapes the stones differently, paints the shadows in its own colours. The first voices you hear are the cautious ones, the kind that choose words like coincidence and parallel development. They remind you that humans are inventive in similar ways no matter where they live, that a circle of stones here and a stepped platform there do not mean a shared origin, that people separated by oceans can still read the same stars and shape their homes to match the sun. In this view, the resemblances between your plateau and the far-off sites are the result of practical minds solving practical problems, finding the most stable way to stack stones, the most logical alignment for the seasons. You let this idea sit for a moment. It is not unreasonable. A world without connections still has patterns. A world without a single ancient civilization could still produce 1,000 local geniuses, each discovering a piece of the same truth. The wind shifts around you, gentle, as though agreeing that one answer does not have to erase another. But then other voices come, speaking more boldly. They ask, what if the similarities are not accidents? What if the resemblances are fingerprints left by a civilization that once circled the earth long before our own? They imagine great ships plying oceans we think of as impassable, carrying not just goods but knowledge, astronomy, engineering, the art of making stone sing. They see the flood myths not as metaphors but as memories of the same catastrophe, told in different tongues. In their vision, your plateau might have been a harbour, a capital, or a shrine in a network that spanned from one horizon to the other. You step out of the circle and walk toward the cliff's edge again, feeling the roughness of the ground under your feet. The moonlight glances off the water, and for a moment you picture sails against that silver, tall and square, gliding in from the dark. You imagine crews from distant coasts stepping onto this stone, speaking a language now lost, recognizing the place as easily as we recognize familiar landmarks today. Another theory drifts in from the edges of thought, one older still, or perhaps stranger. It speaks of cycles, of worlds rising and falling in long breaths of time. In this telling, humanity is not a straight line from caves to cities, but a tide that swells and retreats. We're not the first to map the stars, not the first to carve stone with precision, not the first to lose entire continents to the sea. Our own time might simply be the latest in a sequence, each civilization building upon the faint footprints of the last until a catastrophe sweeps the board clean again. If that is so, the builders of your plateau might have been remembering too, shaping their stones after shapes they had inherited from an even earlier age. The wind is cooler here at the edge, and you pull it into your lungs as you listen for more. And there are more. Theories that reach even further, past the earth itself. Some whisper of guidance from beyond the sky, of visitors whose knowledge lit the spark of civilization in scattered places, leaving us with legends of gods who taught us how to build, how to measure, how to navigate by stars. In these stories, the impossible cuts and lifts of the stones are not the limits of ancient human hands, but the marks of technology we have yet to rediscover. The plateau, then, would be not just a ruin, but a relic of contact, an embassy between worlds, forgotten by both sides. You walk back toward the center, the different ideas turning over in your mind like stones in the surf. None of them feel complete, but none of them feel entirely empty either. The night is generous. It allows them all to stand side by side, their edges softening under the same silver light. The official story, the cautious theory of independent invention, the grand vision of a global ancient civilization, the cyclical rise and fall of humanity, the whispers of otherworldly help, each offers a different shape for the same set of stones. You think of them as different lanterns, each lighting the plateau from another angle. None shows the whole place. Together they reveal more than one alone. You sit again on a low stone at the circle's edge and imagine the builders here, long before the sea claimed so much of the coast. Did they speak of these same possibilities? Did they wonder if their designs were their own invention, or echoes of something older? Did they debate where the first city had been built, or whether the stars themselves were once visited and mapped? You can almost hear the murmur of their conversations carried on the wind, interrupted now and then by the call of a night bird or the crash of a wave against the cliff. Some theories will never be more than dreams. Others might someday be proven, though not in the way we expect. The stone does not hurry to give up its answers. It has seen theories rise and fall like the civilizations they describe, and it knows that the truth will still be here long after we have named and renamed it a dozen times. You lean back, your palms flat against the cool surface behind you. The hum is still there, steady, patient. It does not care whether you believe in seafarers from 10,000 years ago, or cycles of forgotten empires, or starborn teachers. It only cares that you listen. The moon drifts toward the horizon now, pulling, shadows long across the plateau. The silver on the stones fades to pale grey, and the air feels thicker, as if the place is drawing you inward. Theories can explain, but they can also distract. You understand now that this place is more than the sum of any explanation. Whether the builders were part of a global web or a local genius, whether they learned from the sky or from the memory of the earth itself, the fact remains. They stood here, in this wind, under these stars, and they shaped stone with intention. That intention hums in the ground even now. You let the thought rest. Not everything needs an answer tonight. The night is for possibilities, for holding them gently, turning them over in your hands without the need to lock them into a single shape. The plateau is wide enough for all of them. The sea is deep enough to hide 1,000 more. You close your eyes once more, and in the dark behind your eyelids you see them. The lanterns of different theories, their light shifting over the same stones. Sometimes they agree, sometimes they contradict, but all of them keep the plateau alive in the mind. And maybe that is the point. The wind moves softly over you, and for a moment the hum in the stones and the slow rhythm of the tide fall into the same beat. Theories rise and fade like waves, but the stone remains, waiting for the next voice to speak, the next mind to wonder. Tonight, that voice is yours, and you wonder still. The air has thickened just slightly, like the moment before rain, though the sky above remains clear. You sit in the circle of stones, the echo of the theories still turning in your mind, when another quieter current of thought begins to move beneath them. It is less about what happened, and more about why we're not supposed to ask certain questions too loudly. The plateau feels like a place that has heard many stories, not just the ones told openly, but the ones spoken in low voices, half hidden from the official record. You realize now that the next part of the journey isn't about stone or tide or even history. It's about the silence between the words. Every mystery like this carries with it a shadow, the suggestion that some truths are not simply unknown, but unseen on purpose. The suppression angle, as some would call it, is not always a matter of grand conspiracies or locked vaults. Sometimes it is quieter than that. A paper that never gets published, a photograph that never finds a willing magazine, a research grant that quietly disappears. And sometimes it is more direct, artifacts removed from the ground and catalogued in boxes that no one is allowed to open, documents that vanish into private collections, excavations halted by orders from far away. You remember reading about certain divas who claimed to find symmetrical structures on the seafloor, only to be told their sonar was malfunctioning, or that they were mistaken, even when the shapes were clear in the photographs. About archaeologists who dated a ruin far earlier than expected, only to see their funding cut and their work dismissed as flawed. In each case, the official explanation came quickly, polished and calm like a stone smoothed by long tumbling, and yet the edges never quite fit. The plateau seems to lean into this thought, the hum in its stones deepening, as if it knows that suppression leaves traces just like construction does. A covered truth is not the same as an absent one. It leaves a kind of hollow in the record, a space where the shape of something missing can still be felt. You rise and walk slowly toward the cliff's edge again, the wind brushing your face. You imagine how knowledge might be treated if this plateau were confirmed, if the date of its stones stretched far beyond accepted timelines, if the tools implied by its precision contradicted what the textbooks teach. For some, such a discovery would be a wonder. For others, it would be a threat. To careers built on the current story, to reputations rooted in certainty, to industries tied to heritage and tourism as they are. Even in the past century, history has been rewritten in ways that angered those who had claimed it as their own. New dating methods have shifted the age of human presence in the Americas by thousands of years, and each time the change came, it met resistance first. What is true for the distant past is true here. People guard their maps fiercely, and when the land changes beneath those maps, the first instinct is often to fold the paper tighter, not redraw it. You walk along the plateau's edge, looking down into the black water. You think of the maps of the ocean floor, the ones open to the public and the ones that are not. Large swathes are still blank or marked only in vague contours, as though the sea itself were shy. But sometimes you hear of shapes glimpsed by deep-sea scans, grids and right angles too regular to be chance. These are explained away as natural ridges, volcanic formations, tricks of light and data. And yet, every now and then, a leak appears, an image slips out, a report circulates briefly before vanishing, leaving behind only a whisper of its existence. Suppression does not always come from malice. Sometimes it comes from fear. Fear of misunderstanding, fear of misuse. If the idea of multiple lost worlds were proven true, how many would claim the legacy as their own? How many would try to bend it into proof of their superiority, their divine right, their dominance over others? The past is not just knowledge, it is power, and power is rarely left unguarded. You stop near a large fallen block, its surface catching the moonlight. The angle of its edges is still crisp, as if it fell only yesterday, though the moss along its side tells a much older story. You run your fingers along the edge and imagine the people who built it. The pride they might have felt in their work. Would they have wanted their story to be known forever? Or would they have understood that some things can only be carried by those willing to approach with care? The hum in the stones changes here. Not louder, but clearer, as though the wind has turned just enough to let the note emerge without distortion. You close your eyes and listen. And for a moment, it feels like the plateau is speaking directly to you, not to reveal secrets, but to remind you that secrets exist, that not every gap in the record is an accident, and not every silence is ignorance. You think of ancient texts that mention lands and peoples beyond the known world, accounts that later editions quietly removed or reinterpreted. You think of explorers who returned with tales of structures no one believed, only for those places to be found decades or centuries later. You think of how many artifacts rest in storage, labelled and forgotten, their significance hidden by neglect rather than by design. The past is a vast library, but not all its shelves are open to view. The wind brushes past you again, and you open your eyes. The horizon is still dark, the moon lower now, the line between sea and sky harder to see. It makes you wonder how many times this plateau has been looked at and not seen, visited but dismissed as just another pile of weathered rock. How many other places lie waiting, disguised by the quietness of their surroundings, overlooked because they don't fit the story we already believe? Suppression, in the end, is a kind of editing, choosing what to leave in and what to leave out. The version we are given may be tidy, but the truer version, the one with all the missing pieces, is messier and harder to hold. And yet, it is that messiness that makes it real. You step back from the edge and walk once more toward the circle of stones. The air feels heavier here, as though it has gathered the weight of all that has been left unsaid. You sit, your palms resting on the cool stone at your sides, and you let the silence stretch. This is the kind of quiet where the mind begins to notice things it usually misses, the faintest scrape of grit under your shoe, the way the wind shifts direction when it meets the standing stones, the pull of the tide far below. In this quiet, the suppression becomes part of the story. It is not the whole of it, but it is a shadow that shapes how the rest is seen. And perhaps the plateau has been holding that shadow as carefully as it holds the light, waiting for someone willing to see both. The moon dips lower, the stars grow sharper, and the hum in the stones feels like a heartbeat under your own. You realize that the silence between truths is just as important as the truths themselves. And as you sit there, the thought comes to you. Not heavy, not urgent, just steady. The things we are not told are sometimes the most important to remember. The wind shifts once more, carrying the scent of salt and the faint metallic tang you noticed earlier. The plateau holds its breath, and you hold yours with it, knowing that the next part of the journey will lead you deeper still into the stories of those who came here before and what they found when they listened as you are listening now. The night seems to grow deeper as you sit in the circle, the stones around you catching only the faintest silver of the sinking moon. The hum beneath your palms is steady, like the beat of something alive far underground. You think of the people who must have come here before, not just the ones who built it, but the ones who stumbled upon it in later centuries, drawn by curiosity or chance. Some of them may have carried torches, their light dancing across these same surfaces. Others may have stood here in the dim grey of dawn, their breath misting in the cool air, feeling the same question that presses softly on you now. What is this place, and what does it mean? You rise and walk toward the cliff again, imagining ships anchored in the shadow of the plateau, their decks creaking as the waves shift. Perhaps the earliest visitors arrived this way, traders, fishermen, or wanderers blown off course. They would have climbed up from the shore and found these stones just as you have, weathered but still arranged with intention, whispering of a time before their own. In the age of great expeditions, there were those who made it their mission to seek out such mysteries. Their journals, at least the ones that survive, tell of dangerous voyages and strange encounters. You picture a 17th century mariner, salt spray stiff in his beard, sketching the outline of this plateau in a leather-bound book, noting the sharp angles and unnatural alignments. His handwriting is quick and uneven, not because he is careless, but because the wind is cold and he is eager to record every detail before the light fades. He will show the sketch to others later, perhaps in a tavern, perhaps in a study lined with maps, and he will be met with polite disbelief. You think of the 19th century explorers, men and women alike, who began to travel not just for trade or conquest, but for the sake of knowledge. Some of them came here with measuring tools, taking note of the dimensions of the blocks, the angles of their placement. One might have carried a compass, noting how certain stones seemed to point toward the rising sun or a distant star. Another might have taken a sample of the stone itself, hoping to compare it to quarries on the mainland. They would have noticed the sea-worn rocks far inland, the absence of mortar, the strange patterns that echoed designs seen half a world away. But not all of these expeditions made it into the history books. You can almost see one in particular, a small team of early 20th century researchers travelling under the flag of a national museum. They come with notebooks, cameras, and crates of supplies. They camp here for weeks, documenting every inch of the plateau. One diver in their company ventures into the waters below with primitive gear, surfacing breathless and wide-eyed. He claims to have seen an archway under the waves, carved and symmetrical, leading into darkness. The others are skeptical until they lower a weighted line and feel it catch against something solid. What happens next is harder to picture, because it fades into that strange place between rumour and record. Some say the team returned with photographs that were never published, locked instead in the archives of the museum. Others claim their findings were dismissed as misinterpretation. The shapes under the water explained away as natural rock formations. A few suggest that the team's leader, faced with pressure from funding authorities, decided to abandon the study rather than risk ridicule or professional ruin. And then there are the even older stories, not from books or official records, but from the mouths of local fishermen, passed down through generations. Sitting by their nets at dusk, they might tell of a time when the sea level was lower, and their grandfathers' grandfathers could walk to the ruins now submerged. They would speak of strange carvings on the stones, worn smooth by the tide, and of the eerie way the water seemed warmer near them, as if the place still remembered the sun of another age. You imagine one of those fishermen years ago guiding an early archaeologist to the base of the cliff. The air smells of salt and drying kelp. The archaeologist is polite, listening to the tale without smiling, but in his notes later he writes, "The man believes there is a city under the water here. Impossible." But he insists, impossible. The word sits in your mind like a stone in still water. How many times has it been used to close the door on questions that deserve to stay open? The wind at the cliff's edge is cool, but not unfriendly. It moves through your hair and tugs gently at your clothes, as though urging you to follow these threads of memory further back. You think of the first divers with reliable equipment in the mid-20th century, scanning the seafloor with lights. You imagine them descending into the cold, feeling the pressure on their chests, their breath loud inside their helmets. And then, out of the gloom, they see it. 2 vertical stones set like gateposts, with a horizontal slab resting across the top. Their fingers reach for cameras, their hearts pounding, knowing they will never be able to describe the sight in words that will carry the weight of standing there. Some of those divers returned again and again, bringing back fragments of stone, seashells fused into their surfaces, bits of pottery that crumbled in their hands. Some of those finds are said to rest now in basements and private collections, tagged with numbers that no one outside a select few could match to a location. Others were quietly returned to the water, perhaps out of superstition, perhaps out of respect. The plateau beneath your feet feels as if it holds all these stories at once. The careful sketches of the mariner, the measuring tapes of the early archaeologists, the wide eyes of the divers, the fireside tales of the fishermen. It is both a sight and a witness, holding memory without choosing sides. You step away from the cliff and wander to a part of the plateau you haven't yet explored. Here, the stones are smaller, arranged in a low wall that curves like the arc of a crescent moon. You run your fingers along the top, and you imagine an explorer from decades past standing in the same spot, sensing that the curve was not decorative but purposeful, perhaps to mark a celestial event, perhaps to direct the eye toward something now gone. In the quiet, you can almost hear the scratch of a pencil on paper, the click of a camera shutter, the muffled splash of a diver entering the sea. You can almost see the light of lanterns moving across the stones in the dark, marking the paths of those who came before you. Some of them left with their questions unanswered, some left with answers they could not share. All of them, in one way or another, left the plateau changed. The hum is still steady underfoot. You wonder if those earlier visitors felt it too, and whether they understood it as you do now, not as a mystery to be solved, but as a reminder that the past is still here, waiting to be felt as much as it is to be known. The stars overhead are bright now, the moon almost gone. The sea below is a sheet of darkness, broken only by the faint glint of foam. You breathe deeply, the air cool and clean, and you think about how many of those forgotten expeditions ended exactly as your night will, not with a grand revelation, but with the quiet certainty that something here matters, even if it never finds its place in the official history, and perhaps that is enough. The explorers are gone, their sails furled, their notebooks shelved or lost, but the plateau remains, carrying the memory of every step, every question, every quiet moment of wonder. And tonight, it carries yours. The moon has nearly vanished now, leaving the stars to scatter their pale light across the plateau. The air feels heavier, not with threat, but with a certain intimacy, as if the night itself has drawn in closer. You walk to the far edge of the ruins where the stones thin out and patches of wild grass have claimed the ground. Here, the hum beneath your feet fades, replaced by the subtle rustle of wind through the blades. This is where the past meets the present, where the work of ancient hands gives way to the tools of our own time. Modern investigations have a different rhythm than the expeditions of centuries past. No more sketches in leather-bound journals, no more lanterns swaying in the dark. Now the work begins with drones that rise from boats like mechanical gulls, mapping the ground and sea from the air. It begins with sonar arrays dragged in slow, deliberate paths over the water, sending invisible waves down to read the shapes hidden below. It begins with satellites far above the clouds, eyes so sharp they can notice the faint outlines of walls beneath, forests or deserts, as if the earth itself were a palimpsest, and we are only now learning how to read its faded ink. You think of the archaeologists who have turned to technology to study places like this. Their computers hum with data, depth scans, LiDAR sweeps, heat signature from buried chambers. In some cases, the results have been astonishing. Symmetrical formations under the sea that match the dimensions of known ancient cities. Faint rectilinear grids beneath miles of sand. Terraces hidden under a dense jungle canopy, invisible from the ground but clear from above. In the last decade, there have been whispers about the oceans themselves giving up secrets. Off the coast of Cuba, deep-sea mapping once revealed what appeared to be massive structures arranged in geometric patterns. Pyramids, roads, circular plazas, lying far below the reach of sunlight. The depths there are so great that if the structures are man-made, they must have been built when sea levels were drastically lower, perhaps more than 10,000 years ago. Officially, the data was inconclusive, the shapes dismissed as odd but natural. Unofficially, those who saw the scans in detail spoke of feeling something shift in their understanding of history. Closer to home, similar techniques have been applied to river deltas and coastal shelves. In the Gulf of Cambay in India, sonar readings showed an ancient city site submerged beneath murky water, complete with artifacts dated by some methods to more than 9,000 years old, a time when such a settlement, according to the textbooks, should not have existed. The site's very existence has been a point of contention ever since, with one camp insisting on its authenticity and another questioning the dating methods and interpretations. Standing on your plateau, you imagine such a scan being done here. A boat moving slowly across the dark water below, instruments painting a picture line by line. Would the operators see the same sharp angles you glimpsed earlier in the moonlight? Would the data show staircases descending into the deep, or chambers where the sea now sways? And if it did, would those results be shared openly, or would they join the growing library of inconclusive anomalies filed away in technical reports few will ever read? Modern tools don't stop at mapping. Some researchers have begun using submersible drones, capable of hovering just above the seafloor, sending back high-resolution video. These machines can slip into places too dangerous or deep for human divers. Narrow gaps between stones, small archways where the current runs strong. You picture one now, its lights cutting through the darkness beneath the cliff, revealing a corridor lined with carved walls. The feed would be broadcast in real time to a small monitor on the deck of a boat, where a team of scientists leans in, silent except for the sound of waves against the hull. And yet, technology has not erased mystery. It has, in some ways, deepened it. The more clearly we can see, the more questions arise. A sonar scan might show a perfect rectangle on the seabed, but it cannot tell us who built it or why. A LIDAR map might reveal the ghostly outline of a road vanishing into the ocean, but it cannot say whether it was abandoned slowly or swallowed in a single night. You walk slowly back toward the heart of the plateau, the stones rising again around you like the walls of a forgotten courtyard. In your mind's eye, the place is surrounded not by sailors and merchants as in centuries past, but by researchers in bright waterproof jackets, their voices crackling over radios. Some of them might be geologists, explaining the stones as ancient volcanic formations. Others might be open to more unusual possibilities, careful with their words but unwilling to dismiss what they see. There's a strange comfort in knowing that the search continues, that even in an age when so much of the world is measured and photographed, there are still places where the data refuses to settle into the expected patterns. Your plateau is one of them. Perhaps it has been scanned already, its outline stored on some hard drive in a university or government archive. Perhaps someone has stood exactly where you stand now, holding a tablet displaying the results of a 3D model, their brow furrowed as they try to match the digital image to the real stones under their feet. You pause at the circle again, placing your hand on one of the upright stones. Its surface is cool, but you can feel a faint vibration. Or perhaps it is just the memory of the hum you've been carrying with you all night. You imagine a scientist setting instruments here to measure microseismic activity, or magnetic anomalies, or the way the stone responds to changes in temperature. The results might be mundane, or they might be added to the quiet catalogue of unsolved puzzles this place represents. Above you, the stars shine without flicker, their positions fixed for now in patterns as old as memory. Somewhere among them are points that ancient builders, whoever and wherever they were, used as guides for their work. Some researchers today still look upward for answers, running simulations to see how the sky would have looked thousands of years ago. They search for alignments between these standing stones and the rising of a particular star, the setting of a certain constellation. If they found such a link here, it could tie the plateau to a calendar older than any written one. You step back and let your gaze travel across the stones. Modern science has given us ways to see beneath the earth and water, to reconstruct the sky as it was long before our time, to examine artifacts at the molecular level. And yet, for all that, the plateau remains exactly what it was before, a place that holds its story close. Perhaps that is the lesson of modern investigations, that seeing more does not always mean knowing more. Sometimes it only means that the questions become sharper, more insistent, harder to turn away from. The night is nearly at its end now. The first hint of dawn is still far off, but you can feel its approach in the subtle change of the air. You take one last slow walk to the cliff's edge, imagining a submersible slipping silently into the water below, its lights tracing the outline of something the world has forgotten. You picture the image appearing on a distant screen, the researchers leaning closer, their faces caught between disbelief and recognition. And you wonder, if they saw what you have felt here tonight, would they tell the world? Or would they file it away, adding one more silent entry to the list of places that almost reveal themselves? The wind rises softly, carrying the scent of salt and stone. Somewhere in that wind is the unspoken truth. The plateau will wait, as it always has, for the next set of eyes to look upon it. And when they do, whether they come with drones or simply with open hands and an open mind, it will be ready. The night feels like it's been holding its breath, and now, slowly, it exhales. You stand in the circle of stones, the sky above wide and clear, the sea below a steady dark mirror. This is the place where the story gathers itself, where all the threads, the official history, the anomalies, the echoes from other lands, the suppressed whispers, the explorers' journals, the modern scans, weave into something larger. It comes to you not as a set of facts, but as a question, ancient and quiet, as if spoken directly into the center of your chest. What if we are not the first? What if we are simply the latest? You let the question rest in you, heavy, but not unwelcome. It does not accuse. It does not demand. It simply exists, the way the tide exists, the way the stars exist. Around you, the plateau seems to lean in, its stones attentive as though it too has been waiting for you to reach this point. You step to the very center of the circle and close your eyes. In the darkness behind your lids, you see not one lost world, but many. You see cities standing on coastlines that no longer exist, their towers bright in the sun, their harbours filled with ships. You see villages deep in valleys now covered in forest, the remains of their homes hidden under centuries of soil and root. You see markets in the shadow of mountains, their stones carved with symbols whose meanings were known to everyone who passed and are known to no one now. And then you see endings, some slow and quiet, the sea creeping higher year by year, a river changing its course, a drought turning fertile fields to dust, others sudden and violent, the sky darkening with ash, the earth shaking until walls fall, the water rising in a single terrible wave. In each case, you see people running, gathering their families, taking what they can carry. Some survive, some do not. The survivors carry stories, memories that they pass to their children, who pass them to theirs, until the shape of the truth blurs but the heart of it remains. We came from somewhere else. We lost something once. We could lose it again. You open your eyes, and the plateau is exactly as it was. But now you see it as part of a chain. Not the first, not the only, not even necessarily the greatest, but one of many stones set in a pattern far wider than any map can hold. It changes the way you feel in your own skin. We're not the top of the ladder, you think. We are one rung, and there may be others above us still. The air moves gently through the ruins, and you think about how much we take for granted in our own time. Our machines, our cities, our certainty that our version of the world is permanent. Yet the stones under your feet say otherwise. They say, we were here once and we are gone now. They say, you may be here now, but someday you will be gone too. And strangely, this does not feel like a warning. It feels like an invitation to humility. You walk to the cliff's edge again, The horizon is dark, but you know the shape of it now, the place where sea and sky meet. You imagine the dawn spilling over it, touching the water first, then the stones, then your own hands, and you wonder what it would mean if we truly understood ourselves as part of this endless cycle, not as the climax of history, but as a chapter in a book that has been written many times before. In that vision, the arrogance that says we are the first, we are the best fades away. In its place comes something softer, gratitude for the time we have, respect for the fragility of the world that holds us, curiosity about the ones who came before and the ones who will come after. What would our cities look like if we built them not to dominate but to last? What would our choices be if we knew that one day we too might be remembered only in fragments? The plateau holds the answer without speaking it. You can feel it in the hum beneath your feet, in the way the wind moves around the stones, in the stillness of the sea. The answer is not about technology or power. It is about continuity, the thread that connects the hands that set these stones to your own hands now. That thread will run forward as well as back, and one day someone else may stand here, wondering about you. You close your eyes again and try to picture them, the ones who will inherit what we leave behind. Will they find towering ruins or only scattered stones? Will they know our names, or will they guess at us the way we guess at the builders of this plateau? Will they believe we were wise or foolish, or both? And will they too feel the hum in the ground, the quiet that invites the mind to wander far beyond the visible? It is a strange comfort to think that we are not alone in time. The world has ended before, and it has begun again. We are living in one of those beginnings, and one day it will end, and something else will take our place. The plateau has seen it before. The sea has covered it before. The stars above have watched it, all without hurry, without judgment. You step back from the edge and stand once more in the circle, feeling the stones around you like silent companions. The question is still there, steady and sure. What if we are not the first, but merely the latest chapter in an endless cycle? It does not feel like a loss. It feels like a widening, as if the world has grown larger without moving at all. The wind brushes past your face, cool and clean. Somewhere far below, a wave strikes the cliff, and the sound climbs up to meet you. You breathe in and out slowly, and you let the questions settle into you like a stone dropped into deep water. It will sink there, waiting, long after you have left the plateau. Above, the stars wheel in their slow, ancient dance. They've marked the passing of countless civilizations, and they will mark the passing of ours. And still, they shine, and still the stones hum, and still the sea breathes. In this moment, you feel no need to know where the cycle began or where it will end. It is enough to be part of it, to have stood here, to have listened, to have asked the question and carried it with you into the quiet. And as you turn your eyes toward the horizon, you feel the first faint suggestion of light far to the east. The dawn is coming, as it always does, and you're exactly where you need to be to meet it. The horizon is still a deep, unbroken shade of night, but you can sense the dawn now, not in the sky itself, but in the way the air feels, in the way the sea seems to draw a slower breath. You stand within the circle of stones, your hands relaxed at your sides, and you let the stillness of the plateau fill you one last time before the day begins to press its fingers over the edges of the world. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you feel as though you're not just standing on this place, you're standing with it. The stone under your feet is cool. The air on your face carries the salt of the ocean, and the faint hum beneath you is steady and low, like a memory being held just under the surface of thought. It's quiet enough now that you can hear your own heartbeat in your ears, matching the rhythm of the waves below. You let your shoulders fall. You let your jaw unclench. The weight of the day ahead, the pull of the life you'll return to, all of it feels far away. Here there is only this, the stone, the shadow, the silence. When you open your eyes, the world feels sharper, but also softer. The jagged edges of the ruins are softened by the darkness. The ocean, black and infinite, stretches into a kind of dream. You step slowly toward the cliff's edge, your feet silent on the uneven ground. The wind that meets you is cool, but gentle, brushing across your skin like the passing of a hand. And then you imagine, not with effort but with ease, that the builders are still here, not as ghosts but as a presence, woven into the stones themselves. You imagine them standing beside you, also looking out over the water, their faces calm, their eyes seeing not just the sea but the memory of a coastline long gone. Perhaps they too once stood in the moments before dawn, feeling the same slow pull in their chest, the same strange mixture of wonder and inevitability. You think of how many feet have stood on this cliff before yours: sailors, merchants, explorers, fishermen, scientists. Each of them carried their own version of the story away from here. Some spoke of impossible structures beneath the waves. Others spoke only of the view. Some never spoke at all, letting the memory settle in them like a stone in deep water. A gust of wind rises and then fades again, and you realize how far the sound travels here. The cry of a seabird, faint and high, reaches you from somewhere out over the dark waves. You can hear the hiss of foam at the base of the cliffs, the shift of water against rock. You can even hear the sound of your own breath, in, out, unhurried. It strikes you that the people who stood here before might have heard the same sounds, that if you could fold time back on itself, the present moment would match countless others before it. The stones beneath, the ocean below, the wind above. You're not just looking at history, you're standing inside it. You step back from the edge and walk the perimeter of the plateau, your hand brushing along the taller stones. Their surfaces are cold, and yet the moment your fingers leave them, you feel their presence still. Every so often you catch a faint whiff of the ocean mixed with the smell of stone, a scent that makes you think of rain on dry rock, of harbours after a storm, of something clean and ancient all at once. The idea comes to you unbidden that the plateau has been watching you as much as you've been watching it. Not in a conscious human sense, but in the way a place can remember the ones who have passed through it. The stone has felt the weight of your steps. The air has carried your breath. The wind has curled around your skin. And when you leave, some trace of you will remain here, as countless traces of others remain. You pause at the circle once more. The sky is still dark overhead, but there's a faint lightening now near the horizon. Not the sun yet, but the suggestion of it. You let your eyes rest there for a long while, listening to the hum, the waves, the air. You feel the question you've been carrying. What if Atlantis was only one of many lost worlds? Shift from something you're trying to answer into something you're simply holding. It no longer presses for resolution. It feels like a companion now, something to walk with rather than wrestle. And in that stillness, something else stirs. Not a vision, not a sound, but a sense. The sense that somewhere, far away, other places like this are also breathing in the night, waiting for their own dawn. Other stones are holding their hum. Other oceans are keeping their secrets. And maybe even now someone else is standing in the dark wondering about you. The wind picks up again, brushing against your hair, and you feel its coolness as a kind of reminder. The day will come soon, but not yet. You still have these last moments in the night. You close your eyes once more and let yourself feel the weight of the stone beneath you, the pull of the earth, the gentle sway of the sea far below. For a moment it feels like the world is still, not stopped, but holding perfectly steady, as if everything is listening. You think of all you've seen here tonight, the ruins under the moonlight, the imagined cities beneath the sea, the stories carried on the wind, the patterns that span oceans, the whispers of explorers and scientists and ancestors. All of it is here, layered in the quiet. When you open your eyes again, the first faint streaks of light are touching the far edge of the water. They are pale and delicate, like the beginning of a painting, but they change everything. The black water softens to a deep blue. The stones take on a faint colour, no longer just silver and shadow. The air feels different, fresher, as if it has been washed. You take a slow breath and let it out, your body relaxing even more than before. You feel lighter, not because the questions are gone, but because you've accepted that they don't need answers to have meaning. You turn once more to look out over the ocean. In the growing light, the horizon becomes clear again, and you can just make out the faintest line where the sea meets the sky. Somewhere beyond that line, the rest of the world is waking. Somewhere beyond that line, another shore waits. The hum in the stone is still there, steady and sure, like a heartbeat you can always return to. You take one last slow look around the plateau, memorizing the way the stones stand against the lightening sky, the way the wind moves through the grass, the way the ocean's breath rises to meet you. And then you close your eyes and simply stand there, letting the place hold you in its stillness. This is what you will carry back with you. Not just the thought of lost worlds, but the feeling of standing in the space between them and your own. The feeling of being part of something so large it doesn't need to end. Somewhere below, a wave breaks against the cliff, and the sound climbs up to you, soft and sure. The light on the horizon grows a little stronger, and you breathe, knowing the night has given you everything it could. The first colour of morning lifts along the horizon, a thin ribbon of pale gold that makes the sea look softer, like silk being smoothed by a careful hand. You stand within the circle one more time and let your breath match the ocean, in, out, the way you did when you first arrived. The stones feel sturdier now that you have walked their edges and listened to their quiet hum. They do not ask you to solve them, they only ask you to remember how to listen. In this light, the world is simple. You are here. The sea is breathing. The sky is opening. The old questions sit beside you like patient friends who do not need to be answered to be loved. You take a step toward the cliff, and the air has that fresh before dawn coolness, clean and almost sweet, as if the dark has been washed and hung out to dry. Below, the waves turn from black to blue, and the foam at the base of the rock brightens like lace. Your shoulders are loose, your jaw is soft. You feel a gentle weight leave your chest, not the weight of the mystery, but the weight of needing to hold it too tightly. Let it be what it is, a soft lamp set in the mind, a light you can return to when the day grows loud. You think of the path you took tonight, how it curled from silence to story and back again. You arrived unsure, with only the whisper of the sea and the glow of the moon to guide you. You let the question open. What if Atlantis was only one of many lost worlds? You walked the official lines, calm and tidy, and then you traced the cracks, the foreign stone, the neat seams, the strange hum. You listened to legends, Mu and Lemuria, islands that slipped away, lands that breathed and then went still, and you lined them up with the clear shapes from other coasts, terraces and circles and stairways under sky and sea. You carried the cautious voices and the daring ones, and you left space for the silence that sits between them. You met the forgotten travellers in their journals and the modern watchers with their glowing screens. And in the middle of it all, you learned the gentlest lesson the plateau had to give, that we might be only a chapter, not the book. Even now, as dawn loosens the last threads of night, you can feel those chapters turning behind you. Cities bright and sure of themselves, markets busy, stone-polished, families laughing in courtyards that now lie quiet beneath the waves. You do not pity them. You greet them. You let their presence stand with you like steady hands laid lightly on your shoulders. Whatever they knew of the sky, whatever they learned from the sea, whatever they made with their patient tools, some part of it has moved forward, carried through stories and instincts and the way a human palm rests on stone and knows that it is touching time. You lower your eyes to a single block at your feet. Its surface is pitted, its edges softened by wind and salt, yet the line it holds is still true. It is a simple lesson, offered without pride. Hold your line. Take your weather. Endure. You imagine your life laid out like this plateau. Not perfect, not polished, but honest in its angles. There is comfort in that. There is quiet power too. The day ahead will ask for much. This stone reminds you how to answer gently. A faint bird call threads the air, and the sound seems to travel forever, through time as easily as through space. You picture the builders hearing that same note, maybe pausing in their work to look up, eyes soft. You picture the sailors, the divers, the scholars, the wanderers. Each of them woke to a morning like this. Most of them are gone now. Their steps have been erased by tide and grass, but their looking remains. Their questions remain. Their careful, steady attention remains, and you feel lucky to stand in that line. You close your eyes and let your breath lengthen. When you open them again, the horizon is a soft band of peach and blue. The silver road the moon drew across the water a few hours ago has faded, but a new path shines in the east, a gentle widening glow that promises warmth. You feel it touch your face, you let it touch your thoughts. If we are one chapter, you think, then we can write it with care. We can build with kindness. We can leave our stones aligned to the things that matter, to sunrise, to seasons, to each other. We can plant our cities like gardens and hear in the wind the voices of the ones who tried before. You turn from the cliff and walk a slow circle around the plateau, a small farewell. Your fingertips brush the old surfaces. The hum is faint now, but you know it is there. Like a heartbeat you can feel only when you're very quiet. You promise yourself that you will remember how to make that quiet, even in crowded rooms, even under bright screens. You will carry a little of this night inside you, the mist, the salt, the long breath of the sea, and make a place for it to rest. Somewhere behind you, the world is waking. Kettles warming, buses beginning, doors opening to cool halls. Let it. For one more minute, this plateau is yours. It offers one last gift, a thought that lands as lightly as a feather. That wonder is not an argument. It is a way of seeing. It is a soft, steady light that makes ordinary things strange again and strange things gentle. Keep that, and every coast becomes a library. Every stone becomes a page. You find your way back to the center of the circle and stand still. The sky is a pale wash now, the first true color of morning slipping in along the edges of the stones. Your mind is quiet, your body calm. You listen to the soft hiss of the water below and the small answers your breath gives. When you speak, not aloud, but inwardly, the words are simple and kind. Rest. Remember. Return when you need to. Before you go, let your thoughts reach once more to the ones who might be listening with you. Someone lying in a dark room far inland, another curled on a couch by a city window, another travelling on a night train, eyes closed against the glass. Imagine us all holding the same thread, across oceans and time zones, each of us leaning closer to the quiet, each of us breathing a little easier. Where are you listening from tonight? Tell me in the hush below this dawn, a whisper in the comments, a small note from your shore to mine. I'll be reading, and others will too, and in that simple sharing the map grows softer and truer. So here is the soft question I'll leave with you, wrapped in the calm of this morning. What else might lie hidden, waiting for us to remember? Let it follow you into sleep or into your day, not as weight, but as warmth, a little lantern to carry in your pocket when the noise grows heavy, and if you feel the pull to return, if the evening asks for quiet and story again, come back to this shore. We'll stand with the stones, listen to the tide, and open the book where we left off. Let us know where you're listening from tonight. We're always listening too. The sun is not yet fully risen, but its promise is written across the water. A gentle shimmer touches the surface of the waves, turning the dark blue into a softer hue, as though the ocean itself is beginning to wake. You take a long, unhurried breath, letting the cool air fill your lungs and loosen whatever remains of the night's tension. The plateau feels different now, not because the stones have changed, but because you have. The hours spent here, in the company of wind and tide and shadow, have left you lighter. The hum beneath your feet is fainter in daylight, but you know it hasn't gone anywhere. It's like the heartbeat of someone sleeping beside you, steady, present, but less insistent when the world grows bright. You find comfort in that. Not all truths need to shout. Some simply endure. Your steps carry you toward the cliff's edge again, drawn by the slow expansion of light along the horizon. In the half-dark, you could imagine anything beyond that line. Other coasts, other ruins, perhaps even the faint outline of another lost plateau. Now, in the soft clarity before sunrise, the horizon feels both infinite and intimate. The sea becomes a bridge between you and all those unseen shores. And that thought, that other places like this might be watching the same dawn, stirs something deep in you. It's no longer just about Atlantis or any single lost world. It's about the rhythm of rise and fall, of creation and forgetting, of remembering and starting again. You picture them now, the other forgotten places standing quietly under different skies. A staircase cut into a cliff in the Pacific, its steps worn but still perfect. A circle of stone in the Andes, kissed by the same starlight you saw last night. A submerged city in the Mediterranean, its streets traced by the slow fingers of the current. You imagine the people who might be near them right now, perhaps standing just as you are, watching the light come, feeling the hum beneath their feet, wondering if they are alone in their wondering. You want to tell them, "We are here too. We are listening." The wind shifts, carrying with it a new scent, less salt, more earth. You turn toward the inland side of the plateau where the land stretches away in slow folds. It reminds you that the ocean is not the only keeper of lost worlds. Beneath forests, deserts, and fields, there are layers of stories waiting in the soil. Entire cities have been found under the roots of trees, under dunes, under centuries of farmland. The plateau's mystery is mirrored there, in places where the sea has never touched, but time has still swept clean. As the light grows, you let your mind wander through those hidden lands. A step pyramid beneath jungle canopy, its shape barely visible until seen from the air. Roads that connect ruins hundreds of miles apart, laid down long before our maps were drawn. Walls of stone so precise that even today no mortar binds them, yet they hold fast against centuries of rain and sun. All these places, like this plateau, hum quietly beneath the noise of the present. The first edge of the sun begins to lift from the water, and the world changes quickly. Shadows shorten, colours sharpen. The stones around you glow faintly with warmth, as if waking from their own long rest. You step into that light and feel it soak into your skin, your eyes adjusting to the gold. This is not the harsh blaze of midday. It is gentle, like the first notes of a song that will play all day. And in that gold, you feel a connection that is almost physical, as though the light itself ties you to every place it touches. The sun rising here will rise there, and there, and there again, tracing a path across the world that brushes over mountains and islands and plains. Somewhere it will shine on stones older than ours. Somewhere it will warm the faces of people who do not know your name but share your wonder. You stand still and let this thought settle, feeling how it shifts your sense of time. The cycle of light and dark, of day and night, is a cycle we all share. The same is true for the longer cycles, the rise and fall of civilizations, the shifting of coastlines, the making and unmaking of memory. To see ourselves in those patterns is to see that we are not apart from the story, we are inside it. Your mind drifts back to the question that began this night. What if Atlantis was only one of many lost worlds? Now, with the dawn on your skin, the question feels less like a mystery to solve and more like a truth to live with. If there have been many before us, there will be many after. That does not make our time smaller, it makes it precious. You think about how we leave our own marks, some in stone, some in story, some in the quieter ways of shaping the lives around us. Most will not last thousands of years, but some might. Somewhere, long from now, a fragment of our world will be found, and someone will wonder about us the way we wonder about those who came before. Will they hear the hum? Will they imagine our mornings? Will they feel the same soft awe? The sun climbs higher, and the sea shifts from gold to silver, to a bright, welcoming blue. You walk once more to the centre of the circle, your shadow short now, the stones warming under the touch of light. The hum beneath you is nearly lost to the day, but it is there, steady as breath. You think of it like a thread, running through all the places and times you've imagined. The thread may go slack for a while, hidden under the noise of the day, but it never breaks. The wind is lighter now, brushing your skin in a way that feels almost like a goodbye. You rest your hands on the tallest stone and close your eyes. For a moment, the noise of the waking world fades, and it is just you, the hum, the sea, and the memory of the night. You hold that moment like a photograph you can carry with you, not to show anyone, but to keep safe inside. When you open your eyes again, the plateau is brighter, clearer. The mystery has not lessened in the daylight, it has simply changed shape. Now, it is not the mystery of shadows and whispers, but the mystery of endurance. How these stones have stood, how the hum has lasted, how the sea has kept their secret and still let the dawn touch them. You take one last slow turn, looking at every stone, every patch of grass, every shadow. You do not need to memorize them. They're already part of you now, stitched into the fabric of your thoughts. The day is here. The night is not gone. It waits, folded just beyond the light. But for now, the sun holds the plateau in its hands. You breathe deeply, letting that light fill you, and you step back from the circle, knowing that you will carry its hum wherever you go. The ocean moves below, steady as ever. The sky opens wide, and in the warmth of this new day, you walk forward, feeling the long, quiet story move with you. The sun is fully above the horizon now, a perfect sphere of gold resting in a pale sky, its light spilling over the stones like warm water. The shadows that had stretched long and mysterious in the night have folded themselves away, replaced by short, neat shapes hugging the bases of the walls. The plateau feels more open in daylight, less like a secret and more like a place that has been patiently waiting to be seen. You walk slowly toward the cliff's edge again, the sea below transformed from the dark unknown into a shimmering expanse of living colour. Greens and blues ripple together, catching the sunlight in flashes that remind you of polished glass. The water moves with a kind of unhurried grace, as if it knows the shape of every stone beneath it, and is in no rush to reveal them. Standing here, you can see more detail than you could in the night. The rock face of the cliff is marked with ledges and fissures, places where birds have made their nests and patches where small plants cling stubbornly to the stone. You wonder if any of these cracks might be hiding entrances, narrow tunnels leading to chambers within the rock. It's easy to imagine them, passages cut by hands long ago, their walls smooth from centuries of tide and wind, leading to rooms where artifacts still rest in the dark. Your gaze drifts back to the plateau itself. In daylight, the arrangement of the stones becomes clearer. You notice patterns you missed before, how certain lines align with distant points on the horizon, how some blocks seem to echo the shape of others as though repeating a phrase in a language of geometry. The circle where you stood through the night now seems less like a random arrangement and more like a deliberate design, each stone placed with an intention you can feel but not fully translate. You walk to the center of that circle again and close your eyes, letting the sunlight touch your face. The hum beneath your feet is still there, quieter than in the night but steady. You imagine it as a voice speaking not in words but in sensation, telling you something you can almost understand. It feels older than the stones themselves, as if it comes from deep within the earth, a slow, patient heartbeat that has kept time for millennia. In your mind, you picture the builders standing here on a morning like this, the sun at their backs or faces, depending on the season, the ocean stretching away in the same endless blue. They would have known this light, this wind, this sound of water, and perhaps Like you, they would have felt the connection between this place and others, not just physically, but as part of a web that stretched across the world. Your thoughts drift outward again to other lost worlds you have imagined. You think of the terraces in the high Andes where clouds drift between the stones. You think of the temples hidden beneath jungle canopy, their towers wrapped in roots like veins holding onto memory. You think of the streets submerged in the Mediterranean, where divers swim through archways that once framed the everyday movements of life. Each one is a note in the same song, a rhythm that plays on no matter how much of it we forget. A seabird circles above you, its shadow gliding over the stones before sweeping out across the water. You watch it ride the wind, moving effortlessly over the divide between land and sea. That ease reminds you that these worlds, the built and the natural, the remembered and the forgotten, are not separate. The plateau is not just a ruin, it is part of the living landscape. The same wind that moves through your hair moves over the waves, through the grass, around the stones. The same light that touches your skin touches every corner of the earth in its time. You take a slow step back and let your eyes wander across the plateau one more time, memorizing the way it looks in the morning. The golden light softens the edges of the stones, but it also reveals their textures, the pitted surfaces, the faint striations that speak of both human shaping and natural wearing. You find yourself wondering about the hands that carved them, the tools they used, the time it must have taken, and then, inevitably, you think about the ending. At some point this place was abandoned, whether it was sudden or gradual, whether it was by choice or necessity. The builders walked away. Perhaps they thought they would return, perhaps they knew they wouldn't. Either way, the plateau remained, holding its form against centuries of wind and tide, waiting for eyes like yours to find it again. It strikes you that every ending is also a beginning for something else. When the builders left, the grasses moved in. When the grass took hold, the birds came. When the sea rose, it claimed the lower stones. And now you stand here, not to reclaim it, but simply to witness it in its current form, not as it was, but as it is. The hum beneath you seems to agree with this thought, as if to say, everything changes, but nothing is truly lost. The sun is higher now, and the colour of the sea has deepened. You turn once more to look out across it, knowing that beyond the visible horizon there are other stories still sleeping. Somewhere waves are brushing against another set of ancient stones. Somewhere a different wind is moving over a different plateau, carrying its own scents and sounds. You wonder if one day those places will be found and studied, their mysteries debated and their stories half recovered. And you wonder if, when that happens, someone will stand there and think of you standing here, another link in the long chain of people drawn to listen to the past in its quietest moments. The wind picks up slightly, cool against the warmth of the sun, and you feel it move through you in a way that is almost like a cleansing. Whatever questions you leave with, whatever answers you never find, you know that the act of being here, of walking these stones, of watching night become day, is itself enough. You close your eyes and listen one last time to the combination of sounds, the faint hum beneath your feet, the whisper of grass in the wind, the steady pulse of the ocean below. These are the constants, the notes that remain even when the verses change. You will carry them with you, as so many before you have. When you open your eyes, the plateau seems brighter still, not because the sun has risen higher, but because you have learned how to see it in both its mystery and its clarity. It is not just a puzzle, it is a presence. And as you take your final slow steps toward the path that will lead you away from the cliff, you feel the hum follow you for just a moment longer, a farewell, and a promise that it will still be here if you return. You linger at the edge of the plateau, your fingers brushing the last of the sun-warmed stones before you turn toward the path that will take you back down. The morning air is different now, lighter, more awake, carrying the voices of seabirds and the subtle movement of the tide. The night's hush has lifted, replaced by the slow rhythm of a new day unfolding. Still, the calm remains in you, stitched into your breathing, steady as the hum you felt beneath your feet. Each step along the worn trail feels like it is drawing you back into the present world. But the plateau is not letting go entirely. It is behind you now, yet you can still see it in your mind. The circle of stones, the curve of the cliff, the way the moonlight once turned the ocean into a silver road. You carry it the way you might carry a melody, quietly repeating in the background no matter what else you hear. Halfway down, you pause and glance back. From here, the ruins are smaller, almost hidden against the rock and grass. To anyone passing without looking closely, they might seem like nothing more than a scattering of natural formations. But you know better. You've walked their edges, stood in their center, and felt the pulse that lingers there. You've asked the questions that open into other questions, the kind that have no easy end. What if Atlantis was only one of many lost worlds? The thought still glows in you, but now it feels less like a challenge to solve and more like a gift to keep. The path curves toward the shore, and soon you hear the ocean more clearly, each wave meeting the rocks with a deep, measured sound. It's the same sea that brushed the base of the plateau in the night, the same sea that touched the stones long before you were here. The water holds no urgency. It will keep moving whether we remember its secrets or not. As you draw closer to the shoreline, you notice how the morning light dances on the water, breaking into 1,000 shifting fragments. It reminds you of all the fragments of the past we've found, the walls, the carvings, the tools, and how each one catches a little of the light but never the whole of it. That's what makes the mystery endless. We will never hold it all in our hands, only enough to keep wondering. You think about how many places in the world must be holding their own hums right now. Quiet, patient places that will one day be found by someone willing to listen. You think about how many stories are waiting for their tellers, how many questions are waiting for the right moment to be asked. It's almost comforting to imagine that the mystery is not something to finish, but something to share, to pass from one voice to another like a torch in the dark. Reaching the edge of the beach, you stop and look out across the water. The plateau is hidden from here by the rise of the cliffs, but you can feel its presence just the same. The connection you formed with it doesn't depend on sight. It's in the memory of the wind, the sound of the sea, the weight of the stones beneath your palms. And maybe that's the truest way these lost worlds survive. Not in the perfect preservation of their walls, but in the way they live inside the ones who stand among them. You find a flat rock near the waterline and sit for a moment, letting the waves come close enough to wet the toes of your shoes. The air tastes of salt. The breeze is soft on your face. If you close your eyes, you can almost feel the plateau beneath you again, as though you've never left. And in this stillness you realize something simple. The stories of the past are not meant to be locked away in glass cases or buried in books. They are meant to be lived with, to be returned to in quiet moments, to remind us that we're not separate from what came before. The lost worlds are not just history. They are mirrors, showing us what is possible, what is fragile, and what is worth protecting. When you stand again, the sun is higher, and the water gleams with the sharp brightness of day. The world around you is in motion, gulls calling overhead, waves folding into one another, the wind stirring the grasses along the cliff. You feel ready to step back into your own life, but you also know you'll return here in thought, maybe even in body, to walk the stones again. You begin the walk away from the shore, carrying the plateau with you not as a puzzle to solve, but as a quiet companion. Every time you feel the noise of the day growing too loud, you'll remember the sound of the sea against the rocks, the light of the moon on the water, the warmth of the first sunlight on your face. You'll remember that there are places in this world, and perhaps beyond it, where the past is still breathing, where the hum is still steady, waiting for anyone willing to pause and hear it. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find yourself asking the question again, not to get an answer, but open the door once more. What if Atlantis was only one of many lost worlds? If you've been here with me, through the night, into the dawn, across the stones, and into the hum, then you already carry part of the answer. And when you step back into your own world tonight or tomorrow, you'll take the story with you, adding it to the map of wonders you've been building in your mind. So wherever you are, whether you're listening under the quiet weight of midnight, or as the first light of day slips through your curtains, or in the soft in-between hours, know that this story is yours now too. And if you want more nights like this, more journeys to the edges of history and the places where fact and legend blur, stay close. There are other shores waiting, other plateaus, other questions ready to wake. Subscribe so you can walk with me again into the next lost world. Until then, may the silence guide you through the past,